dam is low and the grass is long. Color on their roof is wrong. Dirt beside the shed is gone. It still feels like home.
Hi, I'm Nellie from Woodvale, Victoria, Australia, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Hello and welcome back to my room. My name's Nellie Holmes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before I start, there's been some more changes to YouTube, so what I need you to do now is to hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. That way then you'll always be able to see when my videos are uploaded and ready for viewing. Today's video is about pressing or setting seams. We don't call it ironing in quilting because none of us really iron. It's all about pressing. It's about setting those seams and getting everything as strong as possible. So first thing you're going to need is an iron. You're going to need to put your iron on the hottest setting. Just before we go any further, this is a Sunbeam iron. I'm not sponsored by Sunbeam, it just happens to be the iron that I use for my quilting. I do not use this one for Visifix, this is only for my quilting. That's another one as well. You'll see that in the next video, or the video coming up soon is I'm going to do Visifix. But at the moment we're just doing setting seams, pressing and setting seams. Okay, so I have a Sunbeam iron. You need to make sure that your iron is clean. You need to make sure that your base plate's clean. Lots of different ways to clean your iron. Check with your manufacturer of your iron to find out what they recommend, how to clean your iron. Mine only ever does fabric and the quilting fabric. It doesn't go anywhere near the glue, it doesn't go near anywhere else. It only does that. So I really keep mine nice and clean. It needs to be on the hottest setting that you've got no steam. I don't use steam and I don't use starch. Now this is really just a personal thing here. I guess it comes back from many years of actually quilting and sewing. Back in the beginning, the fabric wasn't actually die set like it is today. And so navy and red had a really big chance of bleeding, as we call it. So you needed to sort of like always pre-wash or wash it with colour catchers, all that sort of stuff, because it was really prone to bleed. And one of the things that caused bleeding was water. So I never used steam because you didn't want to have the mess on your ironing board, you didn't want to have the fabric running, you could have sprayed the steam, it could have been spotting on the fabric. So it's just a habit that I've gotten into that I don't use steam and I don't use starch. But it's up to you, that's again is a personal preference. And as I've said to you with all my videos, what it is about is you watch me, I'm going to tell you how I do things. And obviously it's up to you to establish your own techniques and your own way to go about things. So watch other videos. At the top in the search bar, search ironing quilt blocks or pressing quilt blocks, whatever you want to put in, and that will come up and you'll be able to watch other people and they'll be able to tell you why they steam and why they use starch. But I don't use it, so that's the way I go. So you need to, this is a, that's what, you need to have your iron on the hottest setting. This is a little 700 watt iron that I use. Now obviously the higher wattage, the better heat. But I've worked out that the higher wattage, because it's got a bigger surface to heat, you've got a smaller surface like this, because I'm only doing like 12-inch blocks. Occasionally, like up there in the red one up there, the red and black one, these are 19-inch blocks. But those are a bit different. But that was a one-off, that one there. The majority of the time, I'm sewing 12.5-inch blocks. So therefore, my seams that I need to set are pretty small. So this is just perfect for that. So therefore, I believe that having a 700 watt iron with a smaller base plate actually achieves just as much heat as you do with a really big one. So we've got the iron on, we've got it going. So we also now need to take a few things into consideration when we're going to press our seams. What we're actually doing is, we've sewn the seams on the sewing machine, like this. I've taken a couple here as an example. So this comes straight off the sewing machine. So with other videos we cut up our 2.5-inch squares. I've done my 1/4-inch seam across there. And now we need to set it. So by actually, the heat of the iron is actually going to embed the cotton into the fabric and make it strong and give it strength so that it makes the quilt last. This way it gives it added strength to the fabric and also added strength to the cotton, so they work together. So the fabric and the cotton are going to work together, which is why on my pegboard here for you today, I have got do not press open. Most of your garment sewers, and when you're more garment sewers, yes, we had to press our seams open. We press them open so that then they sat nice against the body. We press them open because when you were inserting a sleeve, you had the sleeve gathered, it cut down on bulk. But to do that now in quilting, what you're actually doing there is you're actually weakening the quilt top, and you're actually allowing for the cotton to have too much strength on the cotton and too much weight on the cotton. I know with the Essendon quilt, as it's called, I used nearly 3 kilometres of cotton in that quilt. That quilt was so heavy. So if I had actually pushed my seams open, once it gets lifted up and once it's pulled up and picked up, it actually weakens the fabric and weakens the blocks. I've gone into my kitchen sink to get a few examples out to show you why I recommend that you don't do it. Just don't do it at all. Okay, this is a block that was done for me by a lady, and I'm not really too sure exactly why I have it in the kitchen sink. I'd say it's because it's probably out of size, but it was a really good example of looking at this lady has pressed it open. So I'm going to put a bit of strength and put a bit of pressure on these seams, right? And I'm going to show you exactly what happens. So if you can imagine that, I'm going to pull. Can you see that? Those seams are coming undone. Because they've been pressed open, that has actually weakened it. So the only thing that's holding that together is the cotton that is being used to sew those seams together. And then if I take another one here, this one is also from my kitchen sink one. This one was made wrong. Made wrong because she used a tone on tone, but she has pressed her seams exactly how I'm about to teach you how to do it. And if I pull again the same strength that I pulled then, if you can see that, it's not coming undone. Not coming out. I'm really pulling on this, and it's not really coming undone. It has come undone a bit, but it hasn't come undone like this one here. This one here actually came right down there. Can you see that? That's going to come right down. And it's not only that, it's pulling apart here as well, on this bit here. So we need to work out how, and these aren't overlocked on the end, so these are just like sewn to the end and just cut up. There's no backwards and forwards sewing, reverse sewing on the end of these blocks. Okay, so we need to now work out how are we going to add strength to our blocks, and what are we going to do. So we've taken our 2.5 inch blocks that we sewed and we cut the other day, and what we're going to do first of all is we're going to iron it flat. We're going to iron it flat each side. So what we're doing here is we're embedding that cotton into the fabric that we've just got the segments of our block. So again, I'll do it again for you. Just place it down. Even if it's got the fold in it from where the fabric sits on the bowl, don't worry about that, because the hot iron will actually fix that up. And then flip it over. Okay, now we've just set the seams, right? Now we need to open it up. Now, is it going to be iron to the dark side or iron to the light side? Remember, it's about butting. So what you have to do is go back and watch the other video that I made before, because not necessarily is it always going to be pushing the seam to the dark side. So what we're doing now is we're just folding it in half and opening it up. If you want to as a beginner and you don't trust yourself, you can actually finger press. This is called finger press. Finger press it open. I tend to let the iron do the work, okay? Just let the iron do the work. Slide it up to the seam, get the edge of the iron right into where the sewing is, then it joins the two fabrics, and then let it just flop down and just continue to push the iron over. So I'll go again for you. Again, open up the fabric, pop the iron down on the one bit, pull it out, and put it like that. So what we have now is both edges of the fabric are going on the one side of the block there. Say for instance now, we're going to do one of these ones here, where we cut the half square triangles, or we took these ones here, and we've got 3 bits together. So how do you do 3 bits together? Because you've got your half square triangles, and you've got your back bit. And we need to work out how to get these flat. Because another bit about working and pressing is actually getting it flat. Because you want your blocks to be as flat as they possibly can, so that when you join them together and get them to your quilt top, that they sit nicely and you haven't got like bumpy ridges. So if you can see, it lends itself to lay the opposite way to what we've just been saying, is putting the light to the dark. And this is a classic example of why this rule really doesn't work. And it's up to you to actually look at each block and work it out. So you can see there that it's going to do a lot better if it goes that way than if I try and get it to go back on itself this way. Because then I'm going to have like a puck here of fabric pulling back onto itself, because it actually sits flatter if I iron it that way. So this one here is just being put together. So again, we're going to go again. Set the seams. We already set those ones when we made our half square triangles, so we don't need to really worry about those anymore. So these ones here, so we set the seams. Now obviously, it's going to do a lot better if we go in this way. So we're going to go to the back of the block. Always start when you're doing more joins like this together. So we're going to set it like that. Okay, we flip it over and we press the front. Now, do not, under any circumstances, do this. Do not pull your fabric like that, because what you're actually doing is you pull the fabric like that, like you normally would iron a shirt, is you're actually stretching those fibres, you're moving the back seams, and you're actually pulling it where you're distorting the shape of the block that's been cut out, and the shape of the segment, not the block, the segment rather, that's been cut out like that. So there's no pulling, don't pull on it, don't do anything like that. If you're trying to fudge it to make it into the correct size, well then you've obviously done something wrong. Your cutting's wrong, or your seam allowance is wrong. Go back to that stage. Using your iron to get it in shape is not a really good idea, not a good technique. So what we're doing now is we're making sure as we press these down and we iron up that we don't have what we call a gutter. Now a gutter is where we've got like a little pleat between each segment of the block and where the seam is. So we don't want any gutters, we don't want any sort of like little pleats or little nicks or something like that. We want it all as flat as possible. And as you can see, this has come out really good. So this is flat, and you can see that by doing this sort of like segment of the shoe fly, it actually sits better and it sits flatter if you iron it like that. So if we've got that part going in like that, therefore we need to look at the next segment, which is this bit here. We're going to get ready for butting. So therefore we've already worked out that if we've got this bit going in here, because it's got the points and it's going to sit flat, therefore we need to iron press these ones in. So these ones here are going to have to go in that way, alright? So we're going to go again. Set the seam. Putting the heat onto the block. As it is, it's just been sewn. We're embedding the cotton into the fabric. Go again. Now, as I said, reach your other block back. Check your segments out. Okay, so we have that going that way. So now we need to make sure that when we bring this around, these ones go this way. So as you can see, I'm actually ironing dark to the light. And if I'm ironing and pressing dark to the light, therefore, that rule doesn't actually really apply. So we need to make sure, so I've just got cotton there, I just needed to pick out of the way. So we need to make sure that we have got this going the right way. So again, I'm just checking that I've got my seam right, because I have my other block there. So I need to drop the iron in the middle of this block here, drop the fabric down and let it run out that way. Again, making sure that there's no gutter between the two pieces. Just turn it around, drop the fabric down. Make sure that I've got the iron going, pushing right into the join where the two pieces of fabric meet, like that. And gently putting it down, placing it down, and then the iron do the rest of the work. Just go back again and check that we've got them nice and flat. Now that's ready to butt that one, so we're right to go. So again, we would line it up and go like that, and butt through there. Pin, off you go. Now this is also from the kitchen sink. This is from another lot of blocks that were sent to me. And the reason why I've got these ones out is that sometimes when you've got your pinning happening and you've set your seams, and you've ironed your seams and set your seams, and you're ready to start sewing, you pin it all up, and the dog feeds might just grab the fabric and make the fabric spread apart, and so that it becomes separated, or the fold actually moves as it goes through the dog feed because we've got it the wrong way to where the dog feeds go. But that's okay. Look, as we're beginners and as we're going along, I really don't think that makes much of a difference to where your work's going to end out. Because if you flip it over and have a look at the front, I don't think you can really tell that there's a problem with that. So I wouldn't really worry about stuff like that. I would just leave it and just keep going, because you've got that much more to worry about, and you've got that much more to go. And this is another one of these blocks that's done exactly the same pattern, just using different fabrics. And you can see that that time the dog feed didn't move and the dog feed didn't damage the back, and it still left a really beautiful block. Now there's another reason why. Let's pretend now that we are going along and we are going to put our quilt together. So let's pretend that this is the backing of our quilt, right? And so there's our backing out there. And this is our wadding. We're going to put our wadding down, or our batting. Put our batting down. And then we put our blocks down. I'll take the one that I want to show you that's actually pressed open, right? So lay that down there, and we put our pins in and pretend we're going to quilt. Now, as a beginner, one of the methods that is called quilting, that is actually like a really easy way to get your table runners or your mug rugs or small cot quilts, whatever, together, is to stitch in the ditch. And stitch in the ditch is these seams here, so these seams here is called the ditch, right? And you're going to set your machine up, put your walking foot on, and you're going to sew as close as you can all along there, stitching in the ditch. Well, if you've pressed your seams open, the only thing that's holding them together is the cotton. So you're actually making a very, very weak quilt top, because there's nothing actually to really force it to hold it together. But if you have this one, where you've pressed your seams going closed to the side, whether that be to the dark side or to the light side, whichever way happens to be the best, that you can get the segments as flat as possible. This way here, when you actually sew in the ditch on this one, you're actually picking up a whole section of fabric. So you're actually reinforcing your stitching, and you're reinforcing your quilt top, because you're actually picking up a piece of fabric, which actually is going to make it stronger. So that's another reason why it is best to not have your seams open. Do not, under any circumstance, press with open seams. Now, some of you might be saying, well, how do we go about when we've actually got some segments put together, where I just showed you now how to do those ones. And we've got one here that is multiple segments. So we've got some bulk in the middle with this one, right? So this is what we did the other day. We made this in one of the tutorials. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, iron from the back. So when you've got the segment together and it's put together and you've got a bit of bulk, you always start from ironing from the back. So as you can see, that was my last seam, was down that way there. So that's the first one that I'm going to start with. So we're going to iron that there. And then you open it up, and we're going to see that we've got this sticking up here. So which way is it going to flip down and which way is it going to sit the nicest? And you will see that there will be a way that it will be encouraged to sit the nicest. And it's going to come towards me. So what we're going to do now is we're going to always iron the back of the block first. Or press the back of the block first. Always that iron. But it's really good. A lot of them use the word press. It's not ironing nothing. We're pressing seams open, we're pressing seams closed. Okay, so we've got that done. So I've just ironed the back of the block first. I always start with the back of the block. And then we'll go to the front. And now I'm going to just run over the front. Making sure that there's no gap, no gutter, no pleats, no tucks, and everything's fine. And there you go. So even if I had now a big block, so we'll take the big block, we'll go back to this other one here. So say for instance I finish this block. So this is one's just been sewn, I've just done my last bit on it. So I would start again, pressing my seams on the back first, pressing them all down. And around the other way, go again. All of these have already been set because there's your half square triangles. And them all tucked over, and them all tucked in. And as you can see, that's the reason why this lady here has actually tucked hers back in with the bob the opposite way to what I did. And that's what's caused a bit of grief here. Never mind, we'll manage because it's just showing you how to actually press a finished block. You start the back and then don't pull it. And off you go again. Pressing all your seams, making sure there's no gutters, making sure that they're nice and flat. And so you want this block to be as flat as possible. Okay? Now, another thing that I was wondering about talking to you about is stop Lewis. Okay, Lewis, I'm going to start again. I've actually finished. I went through my notes to make sure that I had talked about everything, and I have. So I'm finished. Everything's been done about pressing quilts. I keep feeling like I've forgotten something, but it's not on my notes. Anyway, so I'm going to start again now and say goodbye. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. As I said again, it was Red Internet that sponsored today's video. My flowers, as always, come from Eaglehawk Florist. Stop again, Lois, starting again. Sorry, I've made a mistake. So thank you very much for joining me today, and again, watching my video on pressing and setting your seams. Remember, the take-home thing that you need to remember today is do not press your seams open. By pressing them open, you're weakening the block. The quilt's probably not going to last because you're relying wholly and solely on the stitching to hold it together. As you can see, by putting it at the back and putting the seams over to the one side, you actually add to the strength. It's embedding, it's putting the cotton into the fabric. I know some people that actually do, before I go again, I need to talk to you about putting weight on the blocks. I don't really know about the weight of a magazine or a ruler going onto the blocks, because by the time, I don't really rush things, but by the time I've done mine, I haven't had any problems with the fabric moving. Hang on, Lewis, I have really fucked this up big time. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, so we're going to go back to the end of me talking about ironing, and we're going to start from there. Okay. Another thing that you may have seen in some of the videos is people are recommending putting magazines and quilt blocks on top of the ironed segments once you've done them. They're saying that it allows the fabric to release and the fabric to relax, but the fabric's already stretched and stressed from the heat. So I really don't know exactly what that's going to achieve except sweat. And I really don't want the fabric to sweat, because you've got plastic going on top of hot fabric, and that's just like putting Glad wrap over top of hot food. Steam and sweat comes out. And putting on top of paper and magazines and stuff like that, is the dye in the paper going to come onto your fabric and if it was a white block or a cream block or something like that? I don't know. I don't do that either, because I really want mine to be the best that I can be, and I don't put anything on them. As I said, I've got a bit of a distance to walk back to my table to sit down, and I usually let it rest and let it relax itself by the time I start sewing again. So I'm not really too sure about putting plastic stuff on it, because I don't want the fabric to sweat, and does the dye on the magazines, is it going to interfere with the fabric? I don't know. So no, I don't do that technique. But anyway, thanks again for joining me today. Thanks again. My flowers always come from Eaglehawk Floral Boutique, High Street, Eaglehawk. How much, you might say, for a bunch of flowers like that? Could you believe that it's $9.95? Aren't they just the most beautiful flowers? And they last so long. Really, really, really lovely quality. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Next week I think I'm actually going to have a video that's going to be wholly and solely devoted to B group. And that's one of the sewing groups that I'm an admin in, and they need an introduction video. So I look forward to seeing you then. I hope you get some rain. Haven't had much rain this week. Only 5.5 we got out of that big so-called wet event. So anyway, you take care. Sun's shining today. It might look nice outside, but I'll tell you what, it's pretty cold out there. It's a top of 11 today. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you very much. Hit the subscribe button, ring my bell, and I look forward to catching you then. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.